Our guest on today's World Have Your Say is the founder of WikiLeaks, Jullian Assange. Many of you are tweeting us, emailing, texting, calling and getting in touch through Facebook. If you want to call us, it's country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Jullian Assange has agreed to answer any questions you would like to ask about his work and the work of WikiLeaks. I can see recent calls coming in from Mauritania, France, Ghana and Canada. You're scuppered, aren't you, because you haven't got enough money to take on all these different legal fronts, and in the end you're not going to be able to get your point across whether it's right or not.
We may be in that position. I believe that as a result of the fight that we are about to push forward on, that we will in fact knock down this blockade, that it will be seen to be the politically motivated attack that it is, and it will go. Now, if it can't, if we are not able to defeat it, of course, every other organisation, Greenpeace, Amnesty, other press organisations, run the risk that they too will be economically attacked as a result of publication. Then the only thing left to do is to set up an alternative financial regime which is independent from interference by big American corporations.
If you use MasterCard or PayPal or Visa or Bank of America, I wonder if you object to their actions in the way that Jullian Assange does. By all means, let him know. Tweet using the WISE hashtag, or you can email worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com. Let's bring up another message for you. Claire on Facebook, she doesn't say where she is, but she says, are you aware of how diplomacy works and how what you do could be jeopardizing the behind-the-scenes diplomatic work that goes on between countries?
Well, look, there is a place for diplomacy. The material that we have released is all more than a year old. I'm not suggesting that at the very moment that sensitive diplomatic negotiations are occurring, always they should be released. Sometimes there is a place for that. For instance, we did work in Iceland where sensitive negotiations were occurring between Iceland and the UK that would have left every Icelandic family with a debt of 60,000 euros. It was important to reveal that at the time, and as a result, Iceland's first referendum went against that negotiation, and rightly so.
But is your mission, let us understand this, is your mission that all diplomatic cables are public?
No, our mission is twofold. Number one, we protect people who come to us and say that they have evidence of wrongdoing in the small or in the large that they want to reveal or that has been censored. And number two, it is to make sure that no one anywhere in the world engaged in a secret plan can know for sure that that plan will be kept secret. And that's a very important type of discipline, that no one will know for sure that what they're doing will not be revealed to the public.
If those of you watching want to pick up on any of the points Jullian Assange is making, you're very welcome to do so. Hansha in Kathmandu says on Twitter, what's the future of WikiLeaks? Well, we'll get into that because we have a number of questions talking about that. Amit in India wants to ask you just quickly on Twitter, he says, what's stopping you revealing lots of information about Indian tax evaders and so on? I suppose the assumption is you've got that information.
Thanks, Amit. The Indian population is a strong supporter of WikiLeaks. In fact, it is one of the two most supportive countries in the world. In India, there's a huge anti-corruption movement that has sprung up around the work of Anna Hazare and us. And so this question is related to that. So we have previously published information for Swiss bank accounts, and there's a famous case of a Swiss banker who publicly said that he gave us, or demonstrated that he gave us, information. Now, he is now in a legal process because he did that publicly. And he was imprisoned for some 9 months, and he is now out. That legal process is ongoing, so I cannot speak any more about the details. But you can rest assured that if this organisation has information, it will publish it eventually. Of course, it must also protect its sources.
I'm sorry, we're going to come on to the Occupy movement because lots of our viewers would like to ask you about that. But just first of all, you keep saying you've got lots of support in different countries in the world. The last time I looked, you get under 10,000 euros in donations every month. That doesn't sound like a whole world of people wanting to make sure you continue your work.
Well, quite contrary. That figure comes about as a result of the blockade. That the reduction
there are lots of other ways of getting money to you. If people really cared, they'd get money to you another way.
The reduction in what has come to us precisely matches the blockade figures. Now, we have just set up new ways for people to get money to us. So international bank transfers, and in some countries, some 12 countries, you can SMS donations to us. And of course, wealthy donors have other means at their disposal, potentially to getting money to us. But let me take issue with this point about support, because we have proper statistics. Reuters has done a proper survey over 24 countries, over 18,000 people, an error margin of only 3%. We have 75% support of the world's population, including the United States.
I take you quoting that survey. I was merely pointing out that it doesn't appear to be manifesting itself in terms of donations. Now, let's turn to the Occupy movement, because lots of our viewers have raised this. In a moment, we'll speak to Naomi, who's involved in the Occupy protests in London. But first of all, Emmanuel is with us from New Zealand. Emmanuel, tell us what question you would like to ask.
Just a pretty simple question, really. I just want to ask Jullian what he thinks about the worldwide Occupy movement.
Well, I mean, it is some kind of dream come true, but we will see where it goes. You know, there is vast counter-reaction to this as well, that it will try and co-opt it and crush it in various ways. But I think it's an extremely positive sign. It is something that has come up from the Arab Spring and the Arab revolutions and moved into Madrid and has now gone to the United States and spread out over the world. A lot of precisely the same people who have been involved in WikiLeaks or who supported WikiLeaks are involved in this movement. Now, you often see criticism of it. Well, what are their demands? Well, there is a basic demand. Accountability, equality, and democracy. That is a basic demand. Of course, one has to get narrower into how one implements that demand. But this is a process to go forward to construct new laws, not to destruct laws,
just so we're clear, because lots of people would like to understand this. Would you be interested in some type of partnership between WikiLeaks and Occupy?
Occupy is not an organization, it is a movement. WikiLeaks is an organization, but its supporters are a movement. And there is a broad overlap between these two groups.
Okay, so you say maybe not a formal arrangement, but there's overlap. Let's bring in Naomi, who is involved in the protest movement. She is based in London. Naomi, what point or question would you like to make to Jullian Assange?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Jullian what influence he thinks WikiLeaks might have had on the global occupation movement.
Well, hello, Naomi.
If
this is the Naomi I think it is,
it might be.
This is the Naomi that also ran the Bradley Manning support campaign here in London. So there is a direct connection we see right here in London between the two movements who are supporting each other. I think what's really going on here is, yes, WikiLeaks showed people that you could actually do something, that you could actually achieve significant reforms by using the internet and by careful structural arrangements. But it is also the educational effect of the internet and, in part, the educational effect of what we have done.
And can I ask you, Naomi, if you were involved in a campaign for Bradley Manning, do you hold WikiLeaks in any way responsible for the situation in which he's found himself? And those of you watching, just to remind you, Bradley Manning is accused of leaking many, many documents from the US military and US diplomatic service to WikiLeaks. Naomi, do you have any concerns about how WikiLeaks may have handled that?
Not at all. If Bradley Manning has done what he is accused to have done, then WikiLeaks played an absolutely essential role in getting that information out into the world, and therefore their role in this is all to the good, really.
Thank you for speaking to us, Naomi. We've not got much time left, but I will get through as many of the questions that I still haven't got to as I can for Jullian Assange. We're going to take a break for a couple of minutes. Stay with us here on BBC World News. Hi, I'm Ross Atkins. Jullian Assange of WikiLeaks is our guest on today's World Have Your Say. Just before the break, we were talking about the Occupy movement. It struck me while listening to you, Mr. Assange, and Naomi from the movement, that some people might think, who are you to speak on behalf of people? You're not elected. You have just simply set up an organisation which revolves around yourself. Why is it for you to speak on behalf of people?
Well, I don't speak on behalf of anyone except myself and our organisation. But I can certainly comment on the good works of others. The Occupy movement, I don't believe it is looking at speaking directly on the behalf of people, except those people who feel that they are aggrieved. I understand there is a proposal in the United States, quite an interesting one, which is to have general elections in every congressional area for the election of 2 members, 1 male and 1 female, to present grievances to the government at the end of the year.
And would you be interested
such a process would be, that sort of process would actually be able to speak on behalf, at least the United States, of all those people who voted for it.
Might you ever consider standing for office?
Well, I'm asked in Australia, but you know, at the moment, I perceive that it is the media environment and what people know about their environment that constrains and drives politics forward in one direction or another. So we've got to shape the media environment to allow people to publish freely, to understand what's going on in their world. If we've done that right, then politics becomes possible. If that isn't done right, we don't even have politics that can be called democratic.
And I wonder, those of you in Australia, would you like Jullian Assange to stand for office? Do let us know. Tweet us using the WISE hashtag. Joanne is in Bogota watching us on the BBC. She'd like to say, in what ways have you put your ego before the well-being of the world by leaking this information?
Well, in no ways at all. But this is an attack that, once again, that I referred to previously, comes from how can you delegitimize the messenger. Now, I have worked behind the scenes for many, many years. It wasn't my choice to come out and be the lightning rod for this organization. I have suffered difficulties as a result that people are all too well aware of. It is a difficult task. But the media itself wanted someone, and they happened to focus in on me, of the various people of the organization. So under that basis, one just has to run with it. Because if you don't speak for yourself, other people will speak for you, and they will put words in your organization's mouth. So it's necessary to come forth and speak for yourself so people hear the direct message, if you like, from the horse's mouth and not as a result of spin.
Alison is in Los Angeles. Let's go from Bogota to Los Angeles. She says on Facebook, how much of your personal legal defense, and of course you're fighting extradition at the moment, how much of it has been financed by WikiLeaks?
Absolutely zero. Now, one might make various arguments as to whether WikiLeaks should, but as a matter of fact, absolutely.
Well, why on earth should it when you're accused of rape and sexual molestation? That's got nothing to do with it.
Absolutely zero has. And the Jullian Foundation makes that extremely clear that it has been zero. Everyone makes it clear that it has been zero. So why is it that that question is going round? Well, I'll tell you. In order to deprive this organization of funds. And it's not the first time. You know, over 18 months ago, fabricated documents were spread around, and sites like Cryptone and reported on by some members of the press, completely fabricated, saying that I was living in South Africa in some kind of
one
mansion.
moment, let me pull
and
you
I have
back
never
to
even been
But one
to
moment,
South
let me
Africa.
pull you back to that aside you made, because it's interesting. You're saying why you might make a case that WikiLeaks could help you out. Do you feel that the allegations being made against you by those two women in Sweden are connected to the work of WikiLeaks?
Well, we can say something that is unquestionable. It is unquestionable that the process that I have gone through has been politicized as a result of my work for WikiLeaks. That is absolutely unquestionable.
Well, some others might question it, including those involved in the Swedish judicial system, but we'll move on and bring in Mahfouz from the World Have Your Say team, who's got details of more of the calls we've been receiving for you, Jullian Assange. Mahfouz.
Quite a few recent calls from 38 countries in total till now, from Morocco, Denmark and St. Lucia. They're interested in your own personal safety, Mr. Assange. And we've had a few criticizing you, Ross, for being defensive about the BBC. Here's this question from Vikram in Delhi, who called us to ask you, what inspires you to do your work when you know your life is under threat? And this from Abu Bakr in Chad. How is WikiLeaks going to survive financially? And related to that, this question from Mohammed in Pakistan. If you get charged or deported, will you shut down WikiLeaks?
Okay, well, a number of questions there. First things first, is your life at risk? Do you actually feel that's true?
Look, all sorts of high-level people have demanded my assassination and even tried to present bills into the US Senate to declare our organization a transnational threat and enemy combatant so that we could be targeted like Al-Qaeda. It is a serious issue, those sorts of assassination threats. That's not to be taken lightly. That said, we take appropriate precautions. I mean, people take precautions when they cross the road every day. We take precautions for a slightly different sphere, and thus far, our people have been spared from physical harm as a result.
And what about that last question? Do you imagine a scenario in 1 or 2 years' time where WikiLeaks may not exist?
I believe that WikiLeaks' work is ensconced you know, people have seen us as a beacon that has been lit, and they will take over our work in one way or another, even if our organisation is wiped out. But I don't think it will be. You know, we have presences now on every continent on Earth. We have over 2 million people who support us in one way or another. So I think that is a robust enough series of affairs where we're not going to be wiped out. The question is, will this extrajudicial banking blockade that is not based on any legal or administrative process, will that damage the organisation's ability to continue its work in the way that it has been able to do so? That's a real question. But I think through fighting in the courts, through fighting politically, and through our supporters finding other ways to keep us going, that we will be victorious.
Lila is watching us in Copenhagen. She would like to ask, do you defend the ethics of hackers?
Well, it depends on what they do. I mean, hacking is simply a process, just like writing is a process, or driving a car is a process. It depends on what you use that process for. Now,
are you a hacker now? Is that what you do now? Part of your work?
No. Now, if we look back at, say, News Corporation and their voicemail box hacking of Millie Dowler, the 13-year-old schoolgirl, why was that wrong? Well, I tell you why it was wrong. It was wrong because a big, powerful corporation focused its power onto a dead schoolgirl. So it's the imbalance in power that's the problem. When journalists go into war zones to take footage of war, or when journalists stand up to big and powerful corporations or big and powerful governments, then one can admire the courage that is used and see that the people must have a genuine belief in what they're doing to be so courageous.
And if you say you've got that belief and that courage, lots and lots of thousands and thousands of people have been reading on the BBC News website in the past few hours that you are likely to hear whether you'll be extradited next week from the UK to Sweden to face those allegations of sexual molestation and rape. Are you scared? Are you nervous?
Well, first, let's just be clear here. I have not been charged. In fact,
I didn't say you'd been charged. I said you were facing allegations.
No member of WikiLeaks has been charged with anything anywhere in the world, including me, and including in relation to Sweden.
But so with respect, that wasn't my question. I was asking you if you're nervous about the ruling next week.
Perverse situation where I am facing an extradition. I have been under house arrest for the last 334 days, but haven't been charged. Is the rule of law breaking down under that circumstance? It appears that it's effectively breaking down. And you ask if I am afraid of this extradition. Well, we will fight in various ways. Of course, it's a serious reality we had to deal with.
But the reason I'm asking you the question is that people are not...
having
Mr. Assange, let me
Interpol red notice, and me having an Interpol red notice for not even being charged.
So with respect,
like a bank blockade against us by the major US banks, even though there is not a single administrative process that has ruled against us, and there is one, in fact, the only one.
Let me come in here, Jullian Assange. Our time is up. I wanted to ask you a follow-up question, but we're not going to be able to do that. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Jullian Assange. We'll keep on discussing this online. Goodbye.